Hey, everybody. We are here with Eric, who you all should know by now, and Andrew, who you may or may not know, but you will by the end of this. We are going to first do a quick little, or sort of quick, we'll see how quick it is. We're going to do a spoiler discussion of the movie, discussion? A spoiler discussion of the movie Relic, and since we all have seen it. And then after that, we're going to have a conversation with Andrew all about movies. So, Andrew, welcome.
Yay.
Eric, thanks for joining us. So, first of all, probably we should just all quickly, before we get into the spoiler discussion, just kind of quickly recap for anybody like what the basic idea of the Relic plot, I guess. I would assume if most people came in here, they know the idea of the story, but we'll give it a quick recap anyway. And also, if you want to hear a review, I've done an individual review. Movie Mainline, we kind of did a group review. And then Andrew has done his own review on Andrew Watches Movies.
Yep, that would be my podcast, Andrew Watches Movies. There is a short thing there, and yeah, you can listen to it if you'd like to. If not, you'll hear my opinion anyway here.
Exactly. So, so what is it? It's directed by Natalie Erica James. Just came out in the last week as of the time we're recording this. She is an Australian director, first-time feature, I believe, for her. And it's basically the story of a grandmother, a mother, and a granddaughter. And the grandmother is starting to suffer from some sort of dementia. It's not super spelled out in the movie, but it's Alzheimer's-like, you know, and the fact that she has gone missing at the beginning of the movie, and the daughter and the granddaughter are coming out to find out what has happened to her. And that's kind of the basic crux of the story. And from there forth, you get originally you just get some kind of creepy elements and some slight supernatural elements, but really it's dramatic story of dealing with dementia and aging, and, you know, how does that affect all members of the family. And in the last third, I think we all agreed that it starts introducing some much more horrific or horror style elements, even though you could say they're pretty highly metaphoric. But there's a lot of things you don't want to spoil if the person hasn't seen the movie. And I know Eric, in our discussion last night, Eric was talking about how this especially hit him, and you could say a little bit about that, like why it kind of hit your personal nightmares.
Yeah, a lot of what was in I alluded to it on the episode, which actually, now that I think of it, this might come out before the episode that I talked about it. So
if it does, wait for that.
But I would have a recurring nightmare of being trapped in a house it's like a labyrinth. Like you go through one door, and then there's a room, and then you go through that room, go through another door, there's a hallway. Like you can't leave the house or whatever building I'm in. This is all recurring dreams I have. Is not part of the movie. And one particular nightmare I had within that labyrinth type house, it started off as my aunt's house, and I would be walking through the labyrinth in my dream, and I get to one room after a while, and there's this curtain. I pull back the curtain, and there's my grandma's mummified dead body there, and it turned out my aunt was keeping her in this house the whole time. And I woke up. That there was more to the dream than that, but I woke up and I was like, ugh. And of course, there's especially later on in the movie, it kind of gets there where they get trapped in the house. It becomes a labyrinth, and there's there was a dead body. Was that the grandma's dad? There was a dead body that they had early on, and they briefly mentioned it or briefly showed it.
We should definitely discuss that as we go through. That's one of the things I want to talk about, is that shack and the visions that the mom Kay has, the mother. What about his basic impressions, like where it struck you? I mean, for me, my mother has passed away, so there was a lot of emotional stuff there, and I think that's why this should be able to resonate for a lot of people, especially if you're older than, say, 35. I think that you are apt to have had a parent either die or getting old enough that these kind of things should kind of hit you. What do you think, Andrew? How did that kind of hit you?
Well, I've had two grandparents that have suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's late in life. So it hit me kind of hard, especially having taken care of one of them for what was it, like a 4-month period, and I was the one that got to take care of him at night. So the wandering, the lack of lucidity, all of that I got to go through. So this movie tapped into a lot of my personal nightmares as well. Things that this film did resonate with me, and I think that as you were saying, it's impossible not to have an emotional response to Relic. Yeah, it's actually a movie that made me feel strange for about an entire day after watching it, even like thinking about things that I've gone through with grandparents.
Yeah,
especially like having to make the hard decisions, which that like a lot of this movie is about that as well. And it's really difficult not to spoil this movie like at all.
Right. So I think go ahead, Eric.
Oh, real quick, I might almost say that it's difficult to spoil.
Yeah,
because even if you know everything about it, it just at least for me, it hit me in such a way that I could have known literally everything about every beat of the movie. It probably still would have hit me in that same way, because it's not like Fight Club or Sixth Sense where it's like this big twist at the end.
Right.
No, it just gets really emotional.
Yeah, I would say if there's
way.
any twists at all, it's like how the daughter and granddaughter will choose to like deal with the situation. I guess that could kind of be a twist if you didn't know until the end which way they were going to go. But I would agree with you that once you know the entire movie, it still should have that impact on you, and you could watch it again and have the impact. I feel like, and I haven't watched it twice, and I think you have, right, Andrew?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I've watched it twice in the same day for some reason. Like
you do that all the time, right?
I just got my TV, and it's the first movie that I watched because I just moved from Los Angeles to Washington as well. Unpacked everything. Relic's the first thing I get to watch. So
seems like this would be kind of a creepy movie to see in a house that you're not super like accustomed to yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just surrounded by boxes as well. It was this or Sinister, I guess.
Yeah, well, that would be pretty good too. So,
and by the way, before I forget too, have you seen the new Kevin Bacon movie, Eric? Like, with your nightmare about being stuck in a labyrinth, you should check that movie out and see how it hits. Just see it. You should have left.
Yeah. That I heard you talking about it on the Andrew Watches Movies podcast. But you said it was written by the guy that did Stir of Echoes, or directed?
Written and directed. It's the same thing. Directed by him and starring Kevin Bacon.
Was that David Koepp, or am I thinking of something else?
No, you're thinking of the right person.
Who's written like a million things, like or helped write a million things. But
it's strange because like David Koepp's like one of those like he's a lot like Joel Schumacher. Like he does stuff that's like really good, and he does stuff that's like, oh God, what the hell are you thinking?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But
go ahead.
Silence. The awkward silences. So going back,
I got lost in your eyes. I'm sorry.
But he did a good Labyrinth movie for you. Like he did a good like stuck in your nightmare.
Yeah, mother Darren Aronofsky's mother does that same thing.
I bet. Oh, oof. So
they go in one room and it's a war zone. It's like, what the hell?
God. The last 20 minutes of that movie is insane. So in Relic, so to talk through it. So it starts out, they get there, the grandmother's gone. And a couple things to point out, like right off the bat, they start the motif of all the Post-it notes, right? So kind of, and that kind of gives the indication of like where the grandma's at, like don't forget to turn off the water. I forget all of them were, but it was stuff like that. Like you might leave for yourself because you forget. You forget to turn off the stove or something, So there's these notes all over the house. And then the other thing you're struck by is there's locks everywhere, like bolts on the inside. And I remember it really struck me. At first I didn't think much of it because you just see it on some doors. But then there's one door where it's like a wooden spoon is used as like a bolt, if I remember correctly. And that starts to kind of set up the creep factor a little bit. And then there's at least 2, if not 3 instances where you kind of just see this really quick hint of a shadowy figure following various people. And And how do you all read that after seeing the movie? Is that going to basically be like, is it like a spirit? Is it the specter of dementia? Like, what is that?
Well, that's what I read it as through the entire thing, like with the blackness that's eating away at her chest, that's following her. It's how dementia takes somebody over, because you get gray spots in the brain is what it looks like as well, with the brain damage and all of that looks like in the tests. So I thought that it was that coming out like on her body in the film. You both have watched the short that it was based on, so you know that it's something a little bit different than that. So I was reading it the entire time as the disease taking over her body and kind of eating away at it like a cancer from within.
I still think it's that, personally. I mean, I don't think the short is necessarily like the same thing. Like, you can see her working on some themes there, but I don't think you have to read the short as the same thing. It's like
the short's also different characters entirely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't recall there wasn't the black mold like there was in Relic. It was because it was a daughter and her dad.
Yeah,
and her dad would. Okay, real quick. One of the things that just drove me nuts about that short was the dad he's a woodworker, so he works with a lot of saws and drills and so on and so forth. And he keeps leaving them on.
Yeah,
so I think that was watching. I'm like, turn that fucking thing off. You're gonna cut.
Yeah.
And I think that was sometimes though. I have a grandparent who didn't go through that, but his wife did. But he cut off his fingers, and he was a woodworker. So I mean. When people are elderly, sometimes they do forget to do something. They forget a step there, like even if they're not slipping entirely. So that's valid being in there. Yeah. Like that's kind of how he lost a couple fingers.
Well, with the short, it's odd because in the short, it was instead of black mold, it was sawdust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like the sawdust, like you would leave a sandwich, forget to eat it, covered in sawdust. Mm-hmm. He's working with wood, so there's sawdust, but they focus on that like they do with the black mold. Although I think in Relic, the black mold probably works better because the whole idea of once you get black mold, it's done. Like it's just going to get worse. It rarely gets better. I'm sure it can, but
yeah. So that's kind of the things they set up there. They set up the notes, the locks, the black mold on, like when the grandmother, I should say, does show back up, and she kind of has this spot on her chest of like black mold or a bruise or cancer. It has all those kind of implications of like this growing rot almost. And then you see the black mold in the house as well, like in the wall. And that's something I wanted to ask you guys. So there's this whole thing. First of all, while the grandmother's gone, and Kay and Sam are in the house waiting and kind of wondering what's going on and kind of connecting over that, or disconnecting slightly too. There's a one point where they have the big pounding on the wall, and it's over the mantle where the fireplace is. Now, I read that after the fact because we see the whole lost in the house sequence late in the movie, that the grandmother never left the house. Did you guys read it that way? So they were hearing the grandmother. They were hearing the grandmother at the beginning of that movie.
You know, I didn't read it that way because didn't she have like blackness on her foot and it looked like she'd been outside? But that could be still the mold too.
Yeah,
like in the area that she was in, because I read it that she was out in the woods because of that.
See, I read it that way originally too, but then as I thought back on it, especially after what happens at the end of the movie, I thought like, oh wow, she might have been trapped in the house the whole time. And they were hearing the grandmother there, and that I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So, and that also brought me the other question is, so there's a point early on when they go to the closet, right? So the closet is like a focus point of creepiness or something. You know something's going on with the closet. The closet has a lock on it. Later on, the grandmother says like that they come in from there or something like that. I forget what she says exactly. And when they go in there the first time, I thought they looked through the clothes and you just see like the black mold on the wall. Is that what you guys remember too? Or did they didn't see like the...
Oh, they had the plastic over the clothes hanging that were... Mm-hmm. The plastic was kind of breathing and she moves it to the side and there's black mold in the back wall. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you see a lot of indications of that stuff kind of like creeping in. So now that kind of leads to the second part. So grandmother shows back up and she obviously has been kind of lost. She won't say where she's been and it kind of aggravates the daughter and the granddaughter. So this is where it kind of gets into the stuff that you talked about, Andrew, and that is, how do you deal with somebody who, by all appearances, probably can't take care of themselves, at least can't take care of themselves safely. Like, the implication is she's been wandering around in the woods. And that's where I thought it started to be dramatically really interesting on top of the creepiness, because it's like, these are things that you kind of deal with. Do you take them to a, assisted living home? And the granddaughter's like, no way, man, I'll be here. I'll take care of her. But the mom, or it's hard to say who's the mom and the daughter. Let's just say Kay, who is the middle child. Goes out. Go ahead, say what you're saying.
I want to say something, because we're not using the actresses' names here. And Emily Mortimer, I feel terrible because I saw this movie, thought that she was giving a really strong performance, and I was like, who is that? And I had to look her up, and I'm like, she's in like so many different things. I recognized her, and I was kind of embarrassed. Like, she's a really good character actress who got a chance to shine in this.
She really does.
I think her name should be more well known.
Yes.
So,
I recognize her from Newsroom, because I love Aaron Sorkin, and Newsroom's awesome. But she's great in that. She's one of the main characters.
She's good in Lars and the Real Girl.
Yes, I think I mentioned that in my review too. I was the same thing. I was like, I recognize her, and I couldn't figure out where it was from. And I agree, she is definitely the standout in this movie. Well, they're all really good, but her character is the one that really does the journey. You'd probably agree with that. I mean, she's the
she's the one that goes through the growth. Well, she finds the post-it at the end too that I found to be kind of heartbreaking, and it makes me question. Like, I know it's kind of wrapped in a horror film, but is it a horror movie?
Yeah.
And how much has Guillermo del Toro touched the horror community in what he's done as well? Like, this movie really made me think about a lot of things like that. I've got a cat that's trying to join in.
I just figured this was some Cthulhu thing going on. You're just growing furry tentacles.
Yeah, my cat heard us talking and wanted to join in. Sorry,
it's all
distracted
good
there.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's, so put it this way. It is a horror movie, but it's not a horror movie in the there is an actual monster sense, I don't think. I think it's a horror movie in the sense of it's horrifying, the implications of it in almost a deeper way than you get in.
And also the dementia is a real threat too.
Yeah.
Whether or not the supernatural is actually in the movie or not. I mean, they hint at it, but they never really come out and say the supernatural is a thing. It's mostly a metaphor, but supernatural or not, your brain deteriorating, that's a real threat. It's just as much of a threat as a guy coming at you with a knife.
Yeah.
Well, what Bruce was saying earlier about did the grandmother leave the house ever? This is a horror movie about being stuck in your own mind too, is the metaphor that's within it. And the mind is decaying along with the house at the same time. Yeah. But it's a horror film for her and the people around her as well, because the difficult decisions that are being made, everything in this, it's emotionally horrifying, kind of like Hereditary. Was as well.
Yeah, and the most common connections to this are what Hereditary and Babadook. But I think that everyone's that's doing that. I mean, it is, but I feel like this really is its own thing, and I think it is pretty damn powerful, honestly. And what you're saying, I think, is exactly right. It's almost like you're being the dementia is you're being haunted by your own loss of identity or your own lack. It's like you're almost haunting yourself. It's like your brain is becoming a demon that's eating itself. It's a really hard to describe, but the way she personifies it in the movie is pretty amazing. I did have a question for you guys though. So early on, we see. It's kind of a flashback / nightmare by Emily Mortimer's character, where you see the cabin, right? So there's this cabin that used to be out back of there, and the cabin is now gone, and they've taken the window out of the cabin and put it in the front door, and it's kind of a metaphor that's used out throughout the movie. So in that vision, we see the cabin, and there's an older man in there, and I think he's the great grandfather. Is that what we decided he was?
I assumed. I don't know, but I assumed it was the grandma's dad.
Yeah, that's what I thought before too.
Or related to her in some sense.
you see him, and he's like all kind of almost like mummified when you see him dead on the floor. But has images of him sitting on the bed, and he's all like bent over, and he looks really emaciated, and then he like falls over, and then you see him like after time has passed, and he's all like decayed and like kind of mummified and stuff, kind of like the vision you talked about in your dream, Eric. Yeah. So my question about that was, did that actually happen, or was that just her nightmare memory as a child? And I'm talking about Emily Mortimer's character, like coming upon him after he died. What did you guys take that as?
I just assumed it happened. But again, this is a movie that's part metaphor and part, like, it's hard to tell. The movie's not real clear on what actually happened and what's a metaphor. And I don't think it's really important that you know, because the whole thing kind of works as a metaphor, or it can work as a straight story, depending on what movie you want to watch, really. My guess is that it happened, and then they take the windows out and bring them into the new house. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but I took that as a because dementia is not something you just pick up; it's passed down. So that's what I got from the windows. It's, her dad had it, she has it, the mom's going to have it, the daughter's going to have it, and so on and so forth, because it's just one of those things that's going to continue to. But yeah, I would guess that the dad actually went through something similar.
Is that kind of?
Or I'm sorry, the great grandpa, the old guy at the beginning. I'm sure he went through something similar. Whether or not it happened exactly like that or it was someone's dream, but I think the character existed within that world and went through that same thing.
Well, that's why I'm guessing the writer-director, Natalie, she went through the same thing with a relative, because it's probably her nightmare that it's going to happen to her as well, and it goes through a line because it's a hereditary disease. Like passed down from generation to generation. Because I know I've worried about it. I had both sides. So
yeah, it's rough. So one of the things that I took by that scene, I kind of wondered about this part of it too. I wondered if that scene was kind of there because I wondered if it kind of worked on the Emily Mortimer character because she felt guilty, like they didn't do anything. I almost got the feeling like that he was like left out there, almost left alone, and that they almost. I got the feeling that he was left alone and no one really cared for him. He was kind of almost like not dealt with. And that
the time that he would have died, nobody understood it probably.
And that I almost got the feeling that they were trying to say that when he died, no one found him for a while. And that's why he was all fucked up. And I feel like to me that was a key moment, because I thought that was what turned in Emily Mortimer's character's brain when she was about to leave at the end of the movie, is that she couldn't do that to her mom. You know what I mean? Because that's a key moment in the end of the movie. So I guess we're trying to get to the end moment. So a lot of stuff goes on. There's a lot, gets creepier and creepier. The moms get more and more. There's a lot of discussion about what to do with mom. Granddaughter says, I'll stay here and I'll take care of her. Mom says, let's look into putting her in assisted living, but mom can't do it. Once mom goes to the assisted living home, it's terrible. And you see her. There's a great moment after that where you see her in the car and she's just like, it's fucked up. She knows she can't do it. And then when you get to the end sequence, it's when, like you said, Eric, that kind of the whole metaphor personifies in the house, and you get that crazy like labyrinth sequence. And like, what would you say about that? I mean,
that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Gives me the creeps and I hate it, but it's definitely effective.
Yeah.
The weird thing is I get the grandma being in there because she's lost in her own mind. But then the mom and the daughter go in there. I don't understand what the meaning of that is. Maybe that they understand her a little, since they're able to escape on their own, like fight their way out. Maybe it's supposed to represent that they understand what she's going through a little bit, even though they're not stuck in there like she was.
kind of get pushed. They got pushed. They pushed their way out of it. Still, they can kind of escape it, sort of. I mean, like it's really good.
They can come and go as they please, sort of. But yeah, I'm kind of struggling to figure out what the purpose of the mom and the daughter in there is.
Well, and I also think part of it is it kind of, and I bet you Andrew can just talk to this if you've had people in your life that have done this. There's that terrible guilt of also being. You could be angry of dealing with this with a family member. You can be horrified. It can actually be repulsive. And I think all of those aspects are kind of going on in that final sequence where like her leg is breaking and she's crawling like a monster and all this stuff. And they're trying to get away from her, which is like literally trying to get away from her, you know? And I think that is really effective too, because it's like all of those emotions occur. And it really, hang on, my thing's sleeping out on me here. Okay, sorry. All those things occur, but I mean, that's realistic. You don't just feel one thing. You don't just feel like, oh, I'm here and I'm great and I'm going to take care of you and I love you and that's all it is. It's like all those emotions, like horror, anger. Ugh, yeah.
Oh, it's really difficult. And my grandfather used to fire us all the time. Because he was the CEO of a company in his life before he went through it. So he thought he was still at work a lot of the time. And like the grandmother in the film, especially the scene where she's with the granddaughter and she sees the ring and takes it off her finger, not remembering that she gave it to her. Like that reminded me of some of the nights where my grandfather thought I was a burglar and I wasn't supposed to be in his house. And what I had to do was I had to take him around to different photographs to show him that I was supposed to be there. I was in these. That was him. So that's what I kind of took, like the mother and the daughter being there, because it's an illness that does bring other people into it with them, kind of like she's in the house. And it's also something that their chance of catching that or having that happen to them someday is a little bit higher for having a family member so deep in it, like their grandmother is. So that's kind of what I took that ending as. And it kind of, like, this is why I question like the more horror element of it as well, because that scene broke my heart because of the Post-it note that said, I am love, ? Because that's also what the person who's trapped there, because they were a person before, is wondering in their lucid moments, because they're probably scared too. Like when they wake up and don't remember where they're at, don't remember what they've done, if they're wearing different clothes than they were wearing at some point. And I'm taking this from personal experience too, because I had a grandfather who also liked to put on his tuxedo. It was kind of entertaining. Like you'd just be like 2 a.m. with an elderly person putting a tuxedo on in their bedroom. Like, I mean, it's not the same as the black mold in the house, but I really understood what this movie was going for in those scenes with the deterioration of the person. And like, really, when you are a caretaker for them, your life deteriorates a little bit as well, and it can't be helped. Like, I don't know, that end had a lot of that going on for me in it.
Yeah, so that kind of leads to the final end part, right? So they
all like the end from when they're going into the labyrinth, where they're being pulled into the illness with her, like from that point on, like with the banging on the walls and everything. Yeah,
right.
And everything's twisting, and they're like gravity's all fucked up, and the walls are closing in, and just all that stuff.
That makes sense. So, like, as you say, they pull you into the disease with you.
Yes.
And so, like, that would explain while they're in there. And then, but they can get out. They can turn their back and leave if they want to.
Right.
But then she ends up with the possibility of being like the great grandfather, where she's left alone.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's a choice that they make. They can, and of course, we're about to get into that. But she chooses not to leave.
Well, it's the line too that I really liked in there, where she looks at her mom and she's like, "Well, isn't it your mother changes your nappies and then you change hers when she gets old?" Like, and that's kind of where it comes to, because you have to make the sacrifice. Yeah, which I felt like that ending was all about sacrifice. And
it's almost like they had to see it for all of its like you had to see it as ugly as it was going to get, right? I mean, that whole labyrinth and chasing her and the leg breaking and dragging her through the wall and then coming out. And by the time, so they go through the whole maze, they come out, and then the grandmother is laying on the floor and she's all like fucked up and pitiful. They've hit her and driven her off. They drove her away, and then she's like gasping and like almost like a dying monster on the floor, the way they present her. And it's almost like they've seen it for the worst it can get. It can get the worst it can get. And the granddaughter's like, she was originally like, I'm going to be the one, you know, I'm going to help you out and grandma and all this stuff. But when it really came to it, she wasn't equipped for that yet. She's a kid, you know, and she's ready to run, you know, she's like, I'm out. She's out the front door. And it was the mom that actually has to like make that choice. And I think that's why I said, I thought that that earlier scene with the great grandfather was really key, because I think that really stuck in her head. And when she's walking away from the grandmother laying on the floor, just like as horrible as she is, she knows that in that moment, that person's probably about the most lonely and desperate they've ever been, you know, which of course leads to the fucking amazing final 8 minutes, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I agree too.
Yeah.
Like that ending in that movie, it really pays off for how slow the beginning in the movie is, which I like slow horror movies too. That's not like an insult to the film at all, like calling it a slow burn for me. But it really, really, really paid off. And not in a horrific way either, more of a hopeful way even. Like it left me feeling weird at the end of the movie for a while, but it wasn't like Hereditary, like ripped my guts out and like dragged it all over the floor and then like put it back in like in the reverse order.
Yeah.
Like this one was different than that. And I don't even think it was about the monster necessarily. It was about the ability to love the monster.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like that's what I was left with. And like that person wondering in their lucid moments, can anybody still love me? Are they even there for me? And then them answering that. So I really, I liked the resolution of the film a lot.
Well, like you know, when she's peeling the skin off, it's like, oh, gross. And then you know, they peel the hair off, and then it's just this like black you know, alien looking thing.
Yeah,
emaciated, and it's just so horrifying to watch. And then she just kisses her on the head and lays down with her, and then the daughter lays down with her, and by that time it just started welling up, almost crying. And because it's like it's as horrifying as that scene is to watch, the emotion that it got out of me was complete opposite. It was almost like a celebration of love and family.
Same, like that's what I was saying. Can you love the monster?
Yes.
Well, because they don't at that point she doesn't see it as a monster. She sees her as her mom, and and she's in a bad way, and she needs to be taken care of, and that's what they're gonna do. And the daughter's like, I'm worried too, but you know, I gotta be there for, you know, they all gotta be there for each other, and it was a really really good ending. Like
I thought
really
so too. And I think that so let me ask you guys. So I read it, and I wonder if you guys read it this way. I read it by the end that the grandmother has died. She's died at the very end. That it's her final moment.
I didn't quite get.
I actually didn't read it that she died. I thought that the illness got worse and she transformed, and then they made the choice to be with her at the end.
Like the epitome of her illness, like fully realized.
Yeah.
Like it's seen for all it is. Yeah. I think you could see it either way. I don't think it really matters, honestly.
Yeah, the end is imminent there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the sense that she's not coming back. Like, she's not dead, but the dementia is past the breaking point where, like, you kind of go in and kind of come out and kind of go in. She's at the end. I got the point that she's not the grandma anymore. She's just essentially in hospice at this point. She's waiting to die, but the mom and the daughter is going to be there until that happens.
The final moments that you described too, Eric, I mean, it really struck me too. And I'll kind of give you my personal story of why it struck me in my mind, because I feel like what it's talking about there too is the way that people don't want to face, like everyone wants to hide away those the real hard parts of the end of people's lives. They don't want to be there and actually love that person be there when that person has that experience, which is what that person craves, right? That person who wants to die alone, you know, in that situation. And in my personal situation, my mother had, before she passed, she had a really bad, like, you know, fall, kind of went to the coma. She basically went to those situations where she's on a machine, right, for like 5 or 6 days, and they're like, she's never coming back from the machine, and the whole family has to decide to take her off, unplug her, basically. I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with this situation, but it's horrible, you know. So you get the whole family gathered there, and, you know, you unplug the machine, and then they tell you, you know, now it's going to be, you know, it's going to only take like, you know, 30, 40 minutes, and then she's going to pass, and everybody sits there. And this is the fucked up part. So, and this is why this movie kind of hits me. I'll try not to choke up here. You know, she doesn't die right away. She's just there off the machine, you know, not there anymore really. And she's gassed, you know, kind of gassed every once in a while. She's just laying there. And you've got, I think I had like, I want to say like there was 10 or 12 family members there of varying closeness, right? You know, I'm her son, but there's her other son and, you know, grandkids and step people. And as hours go by, people leave, you know, until like 8 or 9 hours had gone by, and I'm the only one left. And so I'm the only one left when she passes, you know, but I was like, I'm not going to fucking leave my mom to die alone, you know? So, sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional here, but that's how this struck me, you know? They weren't going to leave her. Huh?
The hug through the computer.
Yeah. I mean, that's how this struck me. It's like the daughter couldn't leave her alone, you know? She couldn't leave her to fight this monster of whatever you want to call it, because she kind of is transforming to this thing that isn't herself anymore, but she still needs what the daughter can and the granddaughter can give her. So that's that final scene. And that's why, you know, kind of hit me pretty hard too. So it's good shit.
Yeah, that movie, I agree with that. Like your take on it. But I think that it is like one of those things too. Maybe even like harder hit for you because they're just holding on there. Yeah. And the mother and the granddaughter there join her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think this is a movie that's going to bring different things out of everybody that like kind of gives themselves over to it.
Yeah. The people who are like responding against it, I've heard a couple people, like one thing is everyone said, this is like the Babadook, not as good. And it's like, okay, well that's...
There's a podcast I listened to that mentioned this movie like 4 months ago because they saw it at a festival.
Yeah.
And they did not like it. Like they really didn't like this movie. And I'm surprised too because I'm really surprised. I almost don't want to mention that podcast because I don't want to like call them out because they're really good too. But
yeah, and then other people, like the only other people I've started that really aren't into it are people like that want like a more, you know, straight ahead horror movie. It isn't that obviously at all.
Yeah. The people are like, I came to watch Pennywise. What is this?
Yeah, and fuck,
and the guy follows instead.
Yeah, all three of us agree. I mean, we all like that kind of shit too. We all. I mean, you just bought the Friday the 13th like collection or whatever, you know. So
yeah, too much money spent on that, but I'll be happy when it comes in the mail.
So, but I think we'd all agree that if people can give themselves over to this and really go into it, it's a pretty fucking good movie. You know, it might falter in a few places. I mean, it's a low budget movie, but for a first effort, I give it really high marks. I think it's pretty awesome.
Me too, and I think some people are going to get angry at the movie too because they don't like to feel, and they go to a movie not to feel and to escape. And this movie, it traps you, the viewer, in it as well. So you can't. You have to feel something for this movie. Like if it doesn't like make you feel something, like I would kind of question a little bit. Like, have you been through anything?
I could see maybe someone like you know, taking care of their parents or grandparents or whatever. And it's like, I hate today. I just need to watch a horror movie and get and then they watch this and it's like, motherfucker.
Fuck you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're that person and you hate the movie, I get it. I get
Yeah, it's like if you were in war and you see a really fucked up war movie that's really effective, you don't want that experience, you know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, going into Relic, you wouldn't necessarily know what it's about. Like a war movie, you're not going to walk into Saving Private Ryan like, I had no idea this was a war movie.
Or Schindler's List or something.
Yeah. Like this, I could see someone going into this having no clue what they're about to walk into, and they're doing that. You know, they're maybe having something similar to that at home. Well, I guess they're still at home watching the movie because the world we're living in now. But
so they'd be
they'd
be trapped inside the house and trapped in the movie, trapped with the situation.
Yep. All they want to do is all they want to do is escape and watch a horror movie, and they can't even do that because.
Yeah. It's I didn't even think about that. It's gonna be pretty terrible for somebody. Like we were saying, Eric, yesterday, I think we both talked about how this kind of also seeps in and kind of creeps on you too. Like after the fact, you kind of sit with it. And you said this too, Andrew. I think you had that experience too. It just kind of.
That's why I watched it a second time.
Yeah.
Like, and it's still it's a movie that still kind of sat with me since I was watching it. There's some moments, especially when. Like the way that the grandmother takes the ring off of the granddaughter's finger.
Yes.
Like that's going to stick with me to the point like in Hereditary when she says, I didn't want to be your mother.
Yeah.
Like it's like that kind of scene. Like where I'm like, yeah, that's stuck. Like it's burned there.
And it's real. And it's that kind of thing where it's like dementia fucks with you because you're dealing with the emotions coming out of that person. But they don't know who you are in that moment. They don't know why they think you're a stranger in that moment. So it's like emotionally truthful, but hurtful and also like confusing. It's that fucked up thing that happens, you know? So we all agree. I guess we can wrap it up. Everybody, if you've seen it, hopefully this gave you some thoughts, or maybe you can add your own thoughts about what you thought of it. Check out Andrew Watches Movies. Check out Movie Mainline. And we will see you soon.